Hello YouTube. Today I've got a Pentax clip-on light meter. I've done a couple videos on these before, so I'm not going to do a lot of this in real time since some of this I've already covered. But I just got this on eBay and it's got some problems, although it does appear to be active. One problem is the power test button is stuck down. It also appears there's a little kink in the cover around the button. The poppet balls and the ISO ASA adjustment don't seem to be clicking right. And this whole thing doesn't really turn properly. It's very loose. I'm going to take the top off and then I'll see what needs to be filmed or photographed for a slideshow later on. I don't remember if I covered in the previous videos, but if you're going to take one of these apart, bear in mind in this portion right here where the ASA numbers are, there's two set screws, one there and one there, that hold this bottom on there. When you take that off, underneath here you can see there's two set screws that press against springs that pass up through the body, and at the end of the spring there's a poppet ball. When you take that off, make sure and do it over a surface where you can see tiny little things, like this one isn't really. Because when you pull that off, those two balls are not captive, so they might drop out if they're there at all, and it's possible that the springs might pop out. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead, take this apart, and because there's plenty of other videos of these things being disassembled. With that in mind, I'm going to pause and proceed. Okay, so sure enough, I got it apart, and certainly this thing got hit or dropped or something, because right here around the high, low, power or battery test knob, it's visibly kinked in. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a noticeable dent in it. When I took off the ASA knob, sure enough, the springs are there, but the poppet balls are not. So somebody's already had this apart. Now when I got this open, let's see if we can get a little bit better view. Try and keep it in focus. Yeah. Alright, focus is going to be a pretty relative thing. In any case, if you were close enough and if the image was clear enough, you would see that the bracket right here that the knob is supposed to turn on is visibly bent. Turning this adjustment here, you can feel something scratching against something else, and if I could show you right in there, this gear, this one, two, this third gear in, is just making contact with that bracket, and that should be not like that. That should be free turning. So we got a significant bend right there on that bracket. Missing poppet balls. However, I'm pretty optimistic because when I put a battery into this thing, the needle immediately went up to its battery check green point. A little green dot there. I hope you can see that. And so when you press this button, which is your battery test button, you press it all the way down, that needle, if the battery is good, should swing right up and stop on or about the green spot. And it did, and it stayed there. And that's what made me notice that the button was stuck in the depressed condition. So we're going to proceed ahead and see if I can rectify that with some spare parts. Okay, so I've gotten that button and framework removed, and let's see, what do I have? There it is. I think that makes it a little more visible. Well, maybe not. In any case, that's the frame that supports the battery test button, and it is considerably bent. The drum appears to be in very good condition. The plunger is in very good condition. Everything is in really good condition except for that one bracket. I should have several of those in my supply of junkers, so I'm going to see what I can do about that. Took a little bit of work, but sure enough, I was able to take one of my clunker junkers, take out the identical part to this bent one, get it installed into this model. It's a slightly different unit. This one has a pin where this one had a screw down on this arm, although the arm appears to be the identical arm. I also discovered that some of the screws were in the wrong holes, and it's probably doesn't make any real difference except for this screw back here. This one should be set into a countersink so that it's flat or below surface, so that when you put the cover back on, it actually fits down flat without getting hung up. Other than that, this one appears to be in very, very good condition. The foam, of course, is gone. It always is. So I'm going to reassemble it, stick a battery in it, and see how accurate it is. Okay, so I just got it back together. I had a battery in it, or I have a battery in it, and I set it to off, which is also the battery check. Got a good battery in there. Can you see that? I don't know. Well, if you can't, that's alright. When you press the button, needle swings up to the little green spot. I also noticed something interesting. I had this thing all together. I haven't done the ASA adjustment yet. So when I said accurate before, I was incorrect. I also noticed something interesting. To check it, I put my finger over the light sensor, and the needle didn't drop all the way down. But I discovered through doing that if I put my hand over, the needle would drop even lower. So I'm looking for a light leak somewhere in this, a gap or something. What I learned was that a certain amount of light will apparently transfer through your finger, because if I cover the sensor up with a black cover, it goes right down to zero, like it should. So I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to pass that along for anyone who might be trying to test a light meter and they're still getting a wrong reading with their finger over the cover. And now I'm going to go and put together the ASA adjustment, which will be best guessed for now, because I'm not going to actually compare it to another meter. I just want to get it back together. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reinstall the ASA gauge back onto the shutter speed indicator shaft. And to do that, I'm going to use my last two poppet balls. Let's see if I can get closer. My last two poppet balls for the missing ones in this. Now what I've gotten in the habit of doing, because they're so easy to lose, is on the underside there's two screws, one at the bottom of each poppet ball well. There's a spring inside there, or should be. I like to turn those screws out a little bit and then punch those springs down in there so that when I put the pop balls on, they're actually sitting down inside a little bit and they're less likely to fall out and disappear, because if you drop one, you're never going to find it. And then I'm going to put this on. Now there's a kerf and a little tab here you have to be aware of. And you're going to hold that thing together. And you're going to turn in those set screws. This is not adjusted properly, but for now it will do. Turn that around, get the other set screw. And then I'm going to turn those poppet ball screws in so they're about where they were before, nice and flush at the bottom. So now, if I've done this right, it should click. And it does. That's probably a little stiff, but it'll do for now. Now I'll crank them up just a little bit. Give each one full turn out. That's a little better. So there. I can set that thing anywhere it needs to be set. So that was it. That's all I wanted to show you. I'm going to replace the felt. Well, I'm going to replace the foam with felt, and then I think this can go into service once I adjust the shutter speed to be correct with the ISO meter part. So, until next time. Okay, so I was going to include a tutorial on setting and adjusting the ASA, this is a parts donor obviously, the ASA shutter speed so that when you take a reading with it, it's actually reading correctly. And bear in mind too, if you've had these things apart, you clip it on the camera, it's possible that your shutter speed may not line up with your shutter speed knob on the camera, and that's another adjustment that has to be made, so that when you clip this thing on here and you've got like the camera set for 125th, that your meter also reads at 125th. I was going to do, like I said, I was going to do a tutorial on that, but I found a couple of links that do a better job of describing it than I can, and it's also step by step, and some of it is even factory information. So I'm going to leave it with that, and I'm going to put the links down below, so that if you have one of these you're fixing, you have a better guide than I can give you by myself. I want to wrap this up with a little bit of information that people can hopefully get some use out of. This is an S1A. I got this from eBay. I think it was 12 bucks including shipping. I bought it in unknown condition. Just checking, make sure my camera's working. I bought it in unknown condition, and I got it. I looked at it. I thought it looks pretty good. It's got some scratches on it, but otherwise it's in really nice shape. The problem with it was that the shutter did not fully close. So I took it apart, took the bottom off, the top off, the lens housing off, and discovered that probably at some point, definitely at some point, somebody had this apart and left it apart for a while, because there was all kinds of little debris inside that I would say came from an extended period of being just left open to the elements. I went through it. I discovered that there's a spring in here that has to be latched a certain way on your mirror, or the mirror is not going to return properly. It was loose, it was flopping, it was dragging on the shutter. The tripod socket was loose. The film advance lever was loose. The guts in the frame counter were not installed properly, and somebody had dumped a bunch of grease underneath your ASA collar here. On this particular model, this does absolutely nothing except tell you what's in the camera. There's nothing else that controls anything. And as I said, the shutter wouldn't close all the way. So I took it all apart, I cleaned all the grease out of it, and I lubed up some of this stuff down here, swept it all out, blew it out with my compressed air. I discovered that when you take off the lens housing, under each one of these screws there should be shims, little tiny copper shims, and they're very uniquely set. I initially thought that they were for leveling the lens housing with the body of the camera. Turned out I was wrong. A sharp-eyed and very knowledgeable viewer corrected me on that. This one had only one shim, with evidence of other shims having been in place. So I guess the point of what I'm trying to, or what I want to convey here, is if you're going to take one of these apart, do a little bit of research first, and be very, very selective with how much and what kind of lubricant you use. Take pictures, take notes, do something, because this one was very badly done. Whoever did it did a terrible job. I don't like to criticize other people's work, but it was assembled badly, it was disassembled badly, and a lot of things that should not have been done had been done to it. And now it's functioning. Shutter closes. I've got to adjust the shutter speed on this, the shutter tension on this, to get that second curtain to close properly. But I think it's pretty close. And I got the low speed to work again, which is that little box of gears right down in there. So just proceed cautiously, and don't be afraid to clean old goo and debris out of the camera. One of the things I found was that, and I think I still have it here somewhere, maybe I can show you. I know you probably can't see that, but that right there is the remains of one of those little copper shims. I found that jammed down in here underneath the rewind button, in between two gears. It was crunched in there, and what, if you could see that little shim, it's ground up to an exact fit of the brass teeth in the gearing. So it's been in there, and it was driven in there hard, and it took some really abusive treatment to get it out. So just proceed cautiously, and know that there probably, anything you take out probably has something else attached to it. And judging by the marks here, I would say use good quality screwdrivers and be very careful, because it's still in good shape, but it's got some pretty nasty scratches from a previous disassembly. And that's all I wanted to say, was just be careful, use lubricants sparingly. I've had mixed luck with lubricants. Some cameras seem to work better when they're almost dry, and other cameras respond very well to lubes. I've had mixed luck with various cleaning methods. No one cleaning method beyond complete disassembly and a real proper scientific cleaning is really going to do the job. So you have to be careful. And that's all I wanted to pass on. This camera had a tough life, and now I think it's breathing again. And it's yet another one of my cameras that I look forward to taking out in the field. And with that, I'm going to sign off.